This week on To the Contrary, a federal judge temporarily blocks a near total ban on abortion in Texas. Then, company over country, Facebook's public relations debacle and how it impacts girls. Then, more single American adults don't live with a partner or spouse, and more adult males than females still live with their parents. We'll sort out why and what it means. Hello, I'm Bonnie Urbay. Welcome to the Contrary, a discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. Up first, the controversial Texas abortion ban. Pro-choice activists celebrate a win. A federal judge granted a temporary injunction blocking enforcement of a Texas law banning all abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy. The law offered financial incentives for private citizens to report people seeking or performing abortions. Biden's Department of Justice argued the law was in open defiance of the Constitution. Joining me today are host of Woke AF and co-host of Democracy-ish podcasts, Danielle Moody, Republican commentator Ann Stone, Repro Action's Aaron Mattson, and Tiana Lowe, commentary writer for the Washington Examiner. So Aaron Mattson, is this unconstitutional, and will the conservative panel of Southern judges to whom this will go on appeal agree with this single lower court judge that it is a violation of the Constitution?
Well, Texas's cruel 6-week abortion ban is clearly and blatantly unconstitutional, and that's widely agreed upon. What the next step will be in the courts is anybody's best guess.
Why do you think there's a chance that they will uphold it? Of course, the panel hasn't been selected yet, but most of the judges on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals are pretty conservative.
So we know that the federal courts have been stacked, particularly by the Trump administration, to produce the types of results where we saw the Supreme Court allowing this blatantly unconstitutional law to go into effect for more than a month. So I think there's no question that this case will ultimately go all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Danielle, and welcome back. We haven't seen you in a while, and we're happy to have you. Do you think, as is being widely reported in the media, that even though this is a win for pro-choice activists, that abortion still won't be available in Texas because people are afraid of getting sued by somebody whom they don't know, who sues them for, they think, helping this person to get another person to get an abortion?
Yeah, thanks so much, Bonnie. It's good to be back. One, I don't think that I don't think that this is actually a win, right? I think that what is happening right now is that we know that this is going to end up at the Supreme Court. We also know that on December 1st, they're already hearing the 15-week abortion ban out of Mississippi. So this is what Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump had wanted and had set up when they had the ability to appoint over 300 federal judges to the bench. It was to get rid of Roe v. Wade, among other things. So I don't consider this so much of a win as it is a pause right now on what Aaron said, which is a horrible, horrible piece of legislation.
Tiana, your thoughts?
So in conservative circles, this law was always controversial simply because, one, it was very clear that this was going to be struck down the minute you had a plaintiff with actual standing, which couldn't happen until the law went into effect. That is now the case. And then also, as Danielle pointed out, the real thing that we're waiting for is Dobbs. You cannot get any pre-viability ban until the court decides on Dobbs. And furthermore, choosing a 6-week mark is unfortunately, and I say this as a pro-lifer, is unfortunately out of step with public opinion. A 15-week ban is not. 7 in 10 Americans support criminalizing abortion in the second trimester. And right now we are a global outlier in the Western world when it comes to us allowing abortions post 20 weeks. No other country in Europe does that. Across most of Europe, it is 12 weeks, is that first trimester legalization, and then it's done. So, this was always predictable.
Your thoughts?
Well, as a pro-choice Republican, I have to tell you, I've always thought this law was wacky. And even many of my friends on the other side of the issue in the party saw it as a real problem because of this clever by half thing of the vigilante justice. They saw that could lead to really bad things for other issues that they care about. So many people have been against this, even those who agreed, that they'd like to see abortion overturned. The law is going nowhere. It's gone.
All right. Well, do you think that you were out at a protest this week, Aaron, you were arrested. Are young women mobilizing to vote? The polls show young people are disaffected and won't be voting in this election. In my home state of Virginia and in one other state, Trump surrogates are running for governor and could take over and with the plan to ban abortion in those states.
Yes, I was one of 12 abortion rights supporters arrested outside the Supreme Court on Monday morning, the first day of the new term, in support of abortion rights. And I want to share that was a multi-generational group, which is important to what you've asked. I've looked at the polls and I'm seeing that young women in particular are fired up about abortion. It is their top issue for young women voters.
So do you agree, Danielle, that young women are motivated? The Trump surrogate is getting pretty far ahead of the former Democratic governor who used to be really popular in the race here in Virginia for governor. And it seems like young people are not, and people of color are not motivated to get out there. Why is that?
I think that there are a couple of things. Right now, our Congress has shown themselves to be completely and totally dysfunctional, right? Like we just had a historic election in 2020 where people of color and young people are the reason why Joe Biden is in the White House. And so here we are at a particular time when we're seeing our investment and we're wondering where it's going. We're still waiting on an infrastructure bill. We have had the COVID vaccine rollout. It's hit a wall. And so I think that enthusiasm right now is like, why am I putting myself out there? Yes, I agree with Aaron.
Putting myself out there
to vote, right?
It is a vote, and people are not considering what the alternative is if they don't get out there and vote.
But I think that they are considering the alternative. And right now they're not being faced with things that are showing them that their vote actually matters. They're not being faced with a Congress that is willing to work for them and work on issues that affect their day-to-day lives. What we're seeing is a cage match every single day on Capitol Hill. And so I think that is what is turning young people and people of color off. It's just like, does my vote actually matter? Will Congress get things done? I do think that these issues are motivating, right? But like, we're waiting for the clock to be turned back in order for motivation to set in. And I think that that's the problem.
Okay. Tiana, what do you think about this? Are you going to go and vote on these issues or what?
Look, contraception has never been cheaper thanks to the Affordable Care Act and available thanks to a lot of state deregulation. Mind you, Joe Biden could could ask the FDA tomorrow to push to make contraception over the counter federally, but that's another issue. I think the fact is we're missing the forest for the trees here. Inflation is up over 5% year on year. Gas, the highest prices since 2014. Your grocery bill is bigger and your paycheck is effectively smaller. Those are the bread and butter issues that motivate voters. And then also not specific to Virginia, but if you're looking at Biden's support among Latinos along the southern border, Biden's border crisis surge, it doesn't affect white liberals out in Arlington. It affects Latinos in Laredo and McAllen. And that's why you're seeing Biden down to double digits, because in those areas among Hispanics. So no, the fact is that right now people are focused on the bread and butter issues and they are not going well for the average American.
Okay, from abortion battles to troubles with social media. We all know messages and images aimed at girls and young women on social media can produce low self-esteem, even suicidal ideations. But at a Senate hearing this week, a Facebook Instagram whistleblower made news, sharing internal company documents that alerted company executives to just how harmful their platforms, especially Instagram, are to girls' mental health and to a united democracy. Yet whistleblower Frances Haugen explained Facebook executives continue to use tactics and algorithms allowing misinformation and harmful pictures to exploit people's fears and cause outrage just to stimulate use of the platform.
I came forward at great personal risk because I believe we still have time to act. But we must act now. I'm asking you, our elected representatives, to act.
Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook's CEO, says his company did not deliberately push content to make people angry or depressed. But Senate Democrats and Republicans are skeptical and say it's all about profits, no matter what harm it does to people and democracy. Senator Amy Klobuchar told us enough is enough.
We have passed no privacy legislation, this Congress, and we have not yet done anything about consolidation. When you have one dominant platform, you should not be surprised when this kind of stuff happens because they simply have no incentive but profits. And those profits have dictated getting young kids hooked on their product, and you can see the results. So this is a very significant hearing today.
What can you do about it?
Pass privacy legislation, make the algorithms more transparent.
All right, Danielle, your thoughts. Is Facebook purposefully damaging girls and, quite frankly, a unified democracy?
Yes, I think that is what Frances's testimony shows us, and that is what the ample amount of reporting that came out of Facebook's own research. And the reality is that they changed an algorithm after 2016 for the 2020 election, and then after that election shifted the algorithm back so that they could make more money. I don't know what else we need to see. Mark Zuckerberg is going to do what he needs to do in order to continue to build a substantial amount of wealth for himself and for his shareholders. He does not care about what is happening to our democracy because it is profitable for him. And that's the reality. And Congress needs to figure out how to regulate.
Yeah, I was shocked when I found out he used to close company meetings by doing a fist bump and saying, company over country. And I think that's a disease that is unfortunately affecting not only politics, clearly politics, but also how corporations work in this country. Does anybody think Facebook is too big and Congress should get in there and, like AT&T 30 years ago, break it up?
I think that's where they're going. And there's some radical changes that are going to happen in Section 230, but 230 itself needs to stay because otherwise the internet would cease to exist if there was too much liability. But clearly Facebook is broken. And it's not just on this issue. I mean, you've got people on the right and the left. When the Taliban continues to have a platform on Facebook and the ex-president doesn't, that's a problem. There's just all kinds of things you can point to. But the stuff with the women and girls is so incredibly troubling beyond measure. This may be the motivator.
Tell us what exactly is it? Because I'm on Facebook.
Well,
I get ads for all kinds of clothes that I couldn't fit into and haven't been able to in 20 years.
Yeah,
that sort of thing. So perfect bodies, or is there
pornography going on? I don't see that. They're encouraging pushing messages that are harmful, but also they haven't found a way to really prevent the bullying that goes on. And that's another thing. I mean, they could have a center where parents could immediately report people who are bullying their children, or there could be time limits as to when the children can be on, because we know it's sometimes at night when that's all they're doing. They're going in there and they get very depressed, seeing the messages from the trolls that are going after them. There's a lot more of that kind of policing. They should spend more time on that than going after conservatives.
All right. Anybody should Facebook be broken up? Is it too big?
Can I emphatically oppose this notion? For starters, we already sort of have a roadmap of what that would be in the 2000 antitrust suit against Microsoft. which basically would have just forced Internet Explorer to be a separate business. So all you would do if you were to quote unquote break up Facebook is, allow Instagram and WhatsApp to be its own separate companies, which still doesn't solve any of the issues that people really care about, because quite frankly, this is a moral panic. Mark Zuckerberg is only beholden to his shareholders. I sort of object to the idea of even calling this woman a whistleblower, because she didn't expose that Zuckerberg is either breaking the law or misleading the shareholders. That's what a whistleblower has to do. There's nothing in here that's actionable under the SEC or under whistleblower protections. The real issue is that this is like all moral panics, where it's about bad parenting. In the same way there was the porn panic of the 90s, the video game panic, this is more of the same. When I was in high school, I wasn't allowed to be all day on my phone. I wasn't allowed to have an Instagram until I think I was 15 or so. Parents need to be in charge of this. If you are letting your 13-year-old go on Instagram and have a public account where they are then making themselves exposed to the entire world and then developing sort of a Pavlovian need for public attention and public likes, that's on you and your parenting. Stop trying to have our gerontocracy, also known as Congress, try and regulate something they don't even understand or have the legal grounds to do.
Okay, all right.
I don't think there's anything Mark Zuckerberg wants more than people to be pointing fingers at bad parents. Listen, I just need to say this very clearly, emphatically. I almost died of anorexia. I was in the hospital 3 times. I've done group therapy with a lot of people. I have never experienced something as disgusting as what I can find on Instagram, and I'm actively avoiding it as someone in recovery. It is a toxic dump, and they know it, and they need to do something about it.
And
Okay, what do you think they need to do about it? How should Congress or the federal courts handle this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one, we really need to look at the targeting the children. The fact is, Facebook wanted to develop an Instagram for kids. That needs to be off the table. That is a horrible idea. Second, we need to look at democracy and disinformation online and the role that they are playing in the challenges to our government. And I just want to link up those two together, Bonnie, because it is really important. When we talk about challenging the self-esteem of women, we know that women play a really important role in fighting back against authoritarianism, which Facebook has been promoting.
How authoritarianism?
I do think so, because what we've seen is that there's countries around the world that are trying to challenge democracy in the United States using social media to do so. That's a long train of reporting. And what Facebook is doing is by promoting content that sparks outrage, the formula, in fact, emboldens those who seek to undermine our democracy.
All right. Thank you for that. And now we go from social media to relationships. If you're a single straight woman looking for a life partner or to get married, new research could be bad news for you. According to the Pew Research Center, 1/3 of single adult men lives with a parent. Single living is growing in the US. Roughly 4 in 10 adults are unpartnered. That is, neither married nor living with a partner. This share is up sharply from 29% 30 years ago. Single men are much more likely to be unemployed, financially unstable, and lacking college degrees than those with a partner. They're also likely to have lower median earnings. Single men earned less in 2019 than in 1990, even adjusting for inflation. At the same time, single women earn the same as they did 30 years ago, but those with partners have increased their earnings by 50%. So, Tiana Lowe, what is going on here, and why are all these people spending their lives without a partner?
So it's sort of messy. If I were to attribute it to one cause, I would say we look at communities, things that can vary from region to region, be it church, be it the country club, be it, the network of parents at a public school. These are all things that have sort of come undone. Part of that is, sure, political polarization. Part of that is sort of further suburban sprawl, which has an economic incentive. We refuse to de-zone housing, so people live further apart. But a lot of it is also just arrested development. But also, though, a lot of helicopter parenting, which, while it happens in very liberal areas, is very culturally conservative, led to my generation. If you look at the statistics of at age 16, have you ever had a job for pay? Have you ever driven a car? Have you ever been on a date? those numbers are at record lows. And the fact is, you're not going to be ready for marriage at 26 if at 16 you haven't done any of those things. And that's a safetyism thing.
So we're blaming Danielle. We're blaming helicopter parenting for this, but I do think Tiana raises a very good point, which is if you have 40% of straight single men living at home with their parents and essentially failing in life, not getting educated, not being able to earn money, and especially, targeted to the communities of color because they always fare economically worse than white people. Is that exacerbating the left-right battle that's going on in our nation right now?
Yeah, I don't think that this has anything to do with helicopter parenting. I think that it has everything to do with a broken economy where people can't find jobs and can't afford to live on their own. And we've created a system for higher education that puts people in an extraordinary amount of debt and doesn't allow them to actually find jobs on the way out. So this is really an economic problem. And obviously, when we're talking about economics, people of color are going to be at the bottom of that totem pole because they make less money compared to the dollar that a white man makes. So, I mean, at the end of the day, if we're looking at this isn't about relationships. This is about the ability to be able to afford to live on your own. This is about the ability of people to be able to buy homes, to be able to go into higher education and not go into debt in doing so. And until we fix our economy that only works for a select few, then we're going to see this issue continue to expand over the course of time because young people right now can't afford to live on their own.
I think you make an insightful point because a job 30 or 40 years ago used to mean with paid vacation and paid health care. And now it doesn't mean that anymore. I used to look at unemployment rates and say, this is masking what's going on here. What we used to call a job is now called a gig. Like working at Amazon and running a truck or something. There's no security in those jobs. There's no, and I don't, I'm not pointing just to Amazon, but all those delivery jobs that have come up, especially since COVID, that they are not treated like the full-time people of several decades ago. Any thoughts on that?
Bonnie, I got to tell you, I disagree with both of the previous speakers. It has more to do with the culture and the impact of the way the culture has gone in the past 2 decades than anything else. There are plenty of jobs out there. I mean, I can't tell you how many times you can go out there and there's stores and restaurants and all kinds of service organizations
and none of them
that are
pay
desperate.
enough to live on.
No, that's not true. That's not true. Do you know how much? Do you know how much a truck driver makes? A truck driver makes more than most teachers, policemen, everybody. There are plenty of good paying jobs out there, and they can't get
because they are on.
And they can't get people to fill them.
Those poor guys
the kids
have
are
no
staying. The kids are staying at home.
Let me finish. Those guys. You're talking about 18-wheelers. Yes, they make money. They also have huge investments in their equipment.
That's one example.
And they're on the road 24/7.
That's only one. That's only one example. Don't focus on that. That's one example. I'm telling you, the jobs are out there. And the problem is the culture is such that these kids are afraid to date. They're afraid of being accused of sexual assault. They're being told toxic, the women are being told they don't need men, and there's toxic masculinity. Stay away from them. Be your own person. You don't need them. Marriage has always been about 2 things throughout history. That is procreation and economics. And marriage has been denigrated and downgraded and dissipated by the way the culture has gone over the past couple of decades. I'm sorry. That's the reason these kids aren't getting married. And that's why they're staying at home.
Erin,
I'm happy to take it from there because thank you, Anne. I actually do agree as a woman that you don't need to get married to be happy or to be complete or fulfilled. I completely agree with that. And if I am responsible for the downfall of marriage in this country, I will take on that burden. I don't think that's what's happening here. I think what's happening is exactly Danielle nailed it, particularly looking at student loans. And now there are these requirements. It used to be You had to get a bachelor's degree. Now it's increasingly more and more higher education. People are drowning in student debt. So I think that's critical. And just one other piece I'd like to bring into this discussion is there are a lot of people getting married.
About out of time.
Sure. Women marrying each other and men marrying each other. It's not just women marrying men.
All right. And we mentioned that. We said that this is about straight people. And there's a whole different set of things going on in the LGBTQ community, and we're aware of that and respect that. That's it for this edition. Let's keep the conversation going on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and visit our website at pbs.org/to-the-contrary. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, please join us next time.
Funding for To the Contrary provided by the E. Rhodes and Leona B. Carpenter Foundation, the Colcom Foundation, and the Charles A. Freoff Foundation. For a transcript or to see an online version of this episode of To the Contrary, please visit our PBS website at pbs.org/to-the-contrary. Be more PBS.